Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon. It's Jeff Johnson with the Local Leaders Podcast, coming to you today with a wonderful guest that has a great story. And I'm excited to have him on today and looking forward to kind of hearing more about. Hey, I want to introduce today Franco Fiorino, the owner and founder of Fiorino. Franco is here today to share with us his ideas and thoughts and, of course, his story about how he came about. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for being here today, Franco.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Jeff, and good afternoon, everyone.
Now, I probably should pronounce it Franco instead of Franco, huh?
Franco, yeah, well, it's okay. It's fine. Listen, I've been in the US since 1975 and still haven't lost his accent. So,
yeah. Well, you sound great. It's me that can't get over my accent. But we're glad to have you here today, and I want to give you the opportunity just to kind of start us off, maybe by sharing your story of yourself and Fiorino, and kind of the idea, the concept, anything that you want to give us to help give a flavor of what you guys are all about.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for the invitation, first of all, and secondly, story. Well, I could start quite early in my life, but I don't know. I mean, let me start a little later with Fiorino, the restaurant that I currently have. I run. I opened this in 2011. This is the smallest restaurant I've had through all my life. And I've been in this business. I've owned restaurants since I was 22. So it's been quite a journey here. This is the first restaurant actually that I've owned solely as a sole proprietor. Well, beside my spouse, my wife, but I've always been with partners in the past. And that creates a little bit of adjustment. You know, you have to give and take when you have partners, but when we are by yourself, you have to really do what you believe in. And the most important thing, if anyone is in the restaurant business for money, it's not a good start. You have to do it, because you like the business, like the environment. The money eventually will come later. Yeah. I never look at the money side in this business. I have to be happy, first of all. Anything that I do, I have to be satisfied with it, whether it's a dish, whether it is relating to customers, whether it is to how you relate with employees. When you're happy, then everything else is fine. And so we started this right in the middle of East Falls, which is a part of Philadelphia. And I have to reiterate, I've been here in Philadelphia since the early 80s. Always been in the restaurant business, so quite a few people know of me. And the East Falls section of Philadelphia is mostly residential. There is, Philadelphia is kind of in between two rivers. Actually, one is the Delaware, the other is the Schuylkill, which is an affluent of the Delaware at some point. And river is nearby here. But I'm really in the middle of a residential area, which at the beginning, when I looked at this location, was you really have to be lucky, but I shouldn't say lucky. You really have to work hard to make sure that the customer comes here, because you're not on a main thoroughfare where everybody kind of walks by and you get the customers.
Yes, sir.
Here, people have to want to come here in order to do the business. And thank God we have been lucky enough to have succeeded. And actually, since we opened, every year has been strong, better than the previous year. Actually, looking at this year after the 2020, which pandemic kind of was a disaster for this business, we are actually back, this quarter with levels of the second quarter of 2019. So the restaurant has rebounded. Now, this is the broader, I would say, part of the last 10 years in with these restaurants. But being a sole owner, basically, yes, you have a lot more responsibility, but you have also a lot more rewards. And if again, we later on probably we can and you can also ask me whether or not there are some recommendations that I could maybe give someone that is watching, which probably are quite a few. But that is mostly the to sum up the last 10 years in this business.
Well, with your experience in the restaurant space and all the things that you've seen and run into over the years, I'm sure you could write a book if you were so inclined, because it's a tough business, and I think owning and operating an independent restaurant is one of the tougher businesses to be in. But there's lessons for any kind of business. When you're talking to people like yourself, we can get lessons no matter what business we're in. But I guess today we'll stay focused on the restaurant space and helping our audience, our listeners, gather up some of that experience and knowledge, and just hearing from you is also an inspiration to hear how one can be successful. So again, we're glad you're here and glad to have the opportunity to learn more about Fiorino and yourself, and specifically, I guess I'll kind of segue from there, and I want to touch back on one thing that you said, which was all your businesses in the past, you've had partners. Today, you're a sole owner. What has been the kind of the biggest challenge of being that sole owner that you've run into? Is it
when you are in a group, when you have partners, and I've had more than one partner, you can take on bigger challenges, I should say, both financially and the one thing and that is the plus, is on the cons, probably you'd have to look at, and I'll give you an example. If you have like 4 partners, that's you count for 25% of that nucleus. You also count, your voice is also counts 25% of the whole thing. So at times you may have ideas that are good or may turn out to be good, that they are kind of set aside for other things. That is probably the biggest challenge, not having control of 100% of what you really want to do, whether it is, in this business, whether it is the menu, whether it is, and I'm speaking for what I know. I mean, I'm Italian. I prepare Italian food, and I also have to tell another interesting story that I became. I mean, I went to restaurant school when I was young, to learn pretty much the whole aspect of the restaurant or of this industry. But I became a cook because I'm sure I'm not a chef, I'm a cook, because it's kind of a different, there is a difference between being a cook and being a chef. So I became a cook because of necessity. The previous restaurant, I ended up, on a week after we had opened, I ended up firing both the chef and the sous chef on a Saturday night with the restaurant full. And guess what? They put the apron on, and then I started cooking. I started taking over the kitchen. And that is, of course, when you are by yourself and things are not done the way you want, then you can do that. But also I have to reiterate, I was a lot younger. Now at 68, I wouldn't even do it. I wouldn't even think of doing it. I probably wouldn't have the energy of doing it. But again, sometimes you have to take the bull, by the horns and say, I'm just going to make it work, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And that is the rewarding part of it. But it goes back to one thing again. I've never done this for money. The money eventually comes.
Yes, sir. But
the money aspect is really to be aware of what goes on in the restaurant. I go to the market every day, probably because of necessity, because it's really a small space. I don't have a lot of refrigeration. So that kind of makes me go to the market every day. If something looks good, I buy them. If the tomatoes don't look good, I won't buy them today. Maybe I'll buy them tomorrow. An example, you order strawberries from a purveyor. They bring you a flat of strawberries. They could be green. They could be, that's what you get. But right. They go to the market. If they're not good, I won't buy them. So, and so you have control of the quality. On the other end, cost, because purveyors are not really doing, buying a truck and hire a driver to come and deliver food to you so someone has to pay for it.
Right.
So ultimately, it's the consumer. I mean, it's us paying for it. But so the key thing, the money aspect of the restaurant is controlling the money, which could be buying, making sure that you're buying correctly, making sure there is no waste. Because waste is probably the biggest downfall of many restaurants. Mm-hmm. And waste could be in many times, could be things going down the trash or wasting food because it's not stored properly, wasting because cooks or waiters makes mistake. I mean, at the end, all of that has an impact on the overall. So once you are able to control that, and even here, I mean, I'm looking at the last 10 years, and I've been running this restaurant with the food cost. And it might seem absurd to many people that know the business, but under 20%.
Wow. Yeah, I would say that's a very aggressive number.
It is. But a lot of it is, you really have to be careful how you design the menu. And you have to make sure that everything gets utilized, But yes. So taking consideration that this restaurant, I do not have a liquor license. I'm a BYO here, which seems to be very popular. And the reason, especially up north, I know down in Carolina, Florida, you have a restaurant and you can get a liquor license for $5,000 a year.
Right.
Here, especially depending the county you are in Philadelphia, for me to buy a liquor license, first of all, you have to buy an existing license. So then it comes in supply and demand. So that probably have to look at $150,000, which is unjustifiable for a small business that I see about 35 people when the restaurant is full. It would be unjustifiable. So we are strictly food. Customer, they bring their own wine. We open the wine. We provide good glassware and so on. But with that, we are operating at that food cost level, and it's been pretty consistent. It's not that, it's like one quarter or 1 week is like that, 2 weeks like that, but
Right.
about through the years.
Right. Well, it sounds like actually that is a really, really good strategy for how you're operating. And you said you were limited on freezer space and things like that based on the size of the restaurant. So you're having to go and acquire your food items yourself, and you go into the market, each day to do it. And when you see things that are no good or no bueno, as my wife would say, then you pass, right? And you look at it the next day. But operating at that food cost percentage is awesome.
Well, I'm not saying that this is the recipe for everyone. I mean,
Right.
there are restaurant large that they won't have the ability, capability, and the power to do that. But in my case, a restaurant this small with a small budget, again, you don't. I mean, nowadays, especially nowadays, that if you look at opening a restaurant, if you were to open a restaurant with a blank space and maybe 2,000 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're looking just to put the kitchen together. You're looking at an astronomical amount of money. I mean, I don't have to tell you. I mean, people are doing this. You're probably looking at upward of minimum. You're looking at $250,000 just for the kitchen. To by the time you're done with all the licensing and all the equipment, safety equipment that you need. So the way I started with a minimum of a budget, minimum. And I took what I had and dealt and trying to make what I have work. There was no refrigeration, so that means, there's only refrigeration enough for what you need. Right. For a short period of time. So, I mean, you have to go to the market every day, and that's what I have to do to make it work.
And you adapted to your circumstance, right?
Well, and then, you adapt a little bit, but unfortunately, I'm in a situation that this was a residential house that was converted to a commercial space, but the structure is what it is. So it's very, very small, very tiny, and you have to work with what you have.
Yes, sir. Well, we all have those constraints. Hey, what would you say today, for those out there who are considering starting their first restaurant or venture, or, maybe those that are in the early stages, what do you see as the industry overall is the greatest challenge right now? Is it recovering from COVID? Is it staffing? Is it something else?
Well, staffing, take what happened this last year. Mm-hmm. And I think this has created really an unforeseen situation with this industry. First of all, staffing. Right now, we are at a point that, many nights, this past couple of months, I have to end up washing dishes because there is no dishwasher available. And not only the one, I know of restaurants here that they are opening half of their restaurant because they cannot find servers.
Right.
So it's a situation that really you have to adjust and make it work. But if you were to start right now, and I'll divide this in two situations. Most of the people that a restaurant is as small as I have, if it is a chef that would be the proprietor, already an established chef, it's one situation. If it were to be a person that would kind of be like on the managerial part of the restaurant, kind of managing the restaurant as an investment, that's a totally different situation. But you really have to do your own work. The first thing, the numbers have to make sense. meaning you really need a good business plan. You need to know the market where you're opening the restaurant, unless you're opening a McDonald's where they actually do all the market. They tell you where
it's going to sit,
where it's going to sit,
Mm.
right? And pretty much that's on as an investor, you do it. Pretty much it's run by the company. But if you do not have a lot of money and you have to go and look for a small space, and you have to go and buy a used stove or a used refrigerator or a used exhaust system for the hood to work. So if you want to make your, let's say, $100,000 investment, make sure that you can open a restaurant with it, you're going to have to do some of that work. And but the biggest part is knowing where you're going. You just have to make sure, knowing where you're going, I mean the area. Right. You have to know your demographic area. And I'm sure you have to do your own work on the type of food. Now, many restaurants, okay, I'll give you an example. If you are, most of the restaurants in the country that I was born in, Italy, they serve Italian food. Let's say 98% of restaurants. You may have a Chinese restaurant in a major city. You may have a Japanese restaurant in the major city, but that is minimal. Here in the West, we have such a pot of a melting pot, say, of cultures and ethnicities, nationalities, mm-hmm. that all kind of, you could open, an Egyptian restaurant, Chinese, Japanese, Hungarian, you would be successful. Yeah. Although most of the cuisine here, I would say in the last 30 years, I would say the Italian influence has had a lot of a big effect on the restaurant industry here in this country. So the type of cuisine that they offer, it's pretty safe. So I know that most of the people, they will eat this type of cuisine. Secondly, I cook what I eat. This is, if you look at my menu, this is, it's fairly simple. It's not really complicated, but it's the food that we eat. And I've done that for the last, in this menu, the last 10 years here in the restaurant. This is actually started now our 11th year. And it's been consistent. You need to have consistency because one of the other problem is inconsistency in a restaurant. Because when you change cook or chef and a customer comes and really likes a dish today, you go there 3 months later and whatever you order is totally different, then you have a problem. So that is where we are. But I kind of lost my original thought with our chef owners. You really need to know where you're going, where you're opening the restaurant, and you have to be positive, secure of what you're doing. Might not be, the success might not be there at the beginning, but you keep working at it, you'll get there. And again, I said, don't do it for the money, because money.
Money is just not going to come in.
Don't do it for the money
out of the gate. That's
right.
That's right. I've heard that a few times, and I think you answered that well with you talk about the numbers. You talked about the numbers have to make sense.
Well, yes.
When you start up and you've got to know the market or the location that you're going to, and making sure that what you're bringing, what you're putting on the table is something that people want. And
again, you could do something that's really unusual, but you have to keep in consideration, first of all, how many people you're sitting. If you have a restaurant that you sit 20 people, and if you are like a really good one of these, you have these chefs that they have all these big names, you could afford to do something that's totally crazy as far as food. I mean, not crazy a bad way, but totally out of the ordinary, and still get 20 people, an example, to fill the restaurant. But if you have a restaurant that you sit 200 people, you better make sure that the food is in a way, the menu that is accepted by more than those 20 people that would dare to eat something that's a bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you still have to pay your cooks, you still have to pay your dishwasher, you still have to pay all of your employees. And if you do not have any customers, if you have no money going into the register, there's
a problem, right?
Right, there's a problem. So those are things really that you have to take in consideration. And that are the biggest part of I think, starting from. But again, you don't really need a whole lot of money. You can do something really small with a small budget. But again, you have to suffer a little bit at the beginning. But again, just stay true to your belief, and eventually you'll succeed.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to get your opinion on something. I got to thinking while you were talking. Everybody knows the pandemic was disastrous for a number of businesses, and especially hard hit were the restaurant industry, and in some cases still being hit. I'm curious, not necessarily, I'd love to know what you guys did, to get through the pandemic and how that kind of changed your business. But do you also want to know if you feel like the future of restaurants is going to be different? Is takeout and delivery and all that going to continue at the pace it's at today? Or do you see that slacking back and people returning to in-house dining?
Yeah. Well, Jeff, answering the last part of your question, I think it's changing. It has changed a little bit. I think though it's coming back toward right now, people, especially I see the last month, really eager to go out.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if I could sit, they were talking about 200 people, but if I could sit 200 people, I would still fill them every night. I mean, that's how crazy it is. Yeah, you may have to do some readjustment, but it's changing. But what we did, and I'm going back to when this thing started in March. We started seeing a decline last year in February, right after Valentine's Day. We started seeing a decline when this COVID was getting some traction on the news. We started seeing a little bit of decline in business. And then we got a mandate here from the city of Philadelphia I think it was toward the middle of March, to shut down the restaurant, to close the restaurant. We couldn't have any people dining in. So we closed the restaurant on March the 16th, if I'm not mistaken. And we were closed for 2 months. But when we closed, I thought maybe this is it's probably a week or a 2-week situation. So it's close. And
we all thought that. Yes, sir.
Well, that's what I thought. That's what we all thought. So I said, the guys, it's just going to take some time off, and then let's see what happens. And that wasn't the case. We ended up being closed for 2 months. We stayed closed. And during that time, I had to kind of figure something out, what to do, how to restructure our menu to be able to do takeout, because the menu that we have now, it's not really conducible to plate for to take away. So we had to tweak the menu, a little bit, expanding a little bit, putting things a little more traditional. Give you an example, like a chicken parmigiana or a veal parmigiana that are actually not on our menu, but so we are able to appeal to more people in order to take advantage of the situation. I started doing we partner with companies, Manufy, that creates as an online, you through our web, put a link through our website, people are able to order online. I looked into delivery. The problem with the delivery companies, which are whether it's Grubhub or DoorDash or Postmates or whatever, or Uber Eats, their portion of the share is quite large.
Yeah.
And a lot of people probably know that they're charging anywhere between 13, 14, 15% of the total bill, which of course, I wouldn't want to, I'm not able to take that kind of loss. So you have to pass it on to the consumer. Then you are at a point that your product is not competitive anymore.
Yeah.
So we made the decision to only delivery, but the customer picks up. So we weren't doing any delivery, and it ended up working out. We reopened actually the week of Mother's Day, because I didn't want to lose that week. But having set everything up to like the online menus, being able to order online, got everybody back to work. And that first week on Mother's Day, we were extremely busy, to the point that we couldn't handle, believe it or not, we couldn't handle the amount of business that we had. And remind you, on Mother's Day last year, we did 170 dinners for takeout. And you have to take in consideration that this restaurant, it's a really small restaurant. I have 2 6-burner stoves in the kitchen and a flat top as a grill. So we managed to do that, which was like ridiculous. But and at the point we still had no indoor dining until so we're trying to figure out. Then in July, the city also lifted or actually they kind of gave us permission to open outdoor dining.
Mm-hmm.
Have a sidewalk here, have a sidewalk right outside the restaurant. It's a little corner, they put like 4 tables, but right across the street, there is an office building that offered me to use their sidewalk. It's a huge sidewalk, really wide. And so that's how we survived last year with, we had to get like temporary permits from the city and so on.
Yeah.
But we managed to survive and to do, to serve people outdoor until it got really cold, maybe towards the middle of October. And at the time, they also had reopened indoor at 25% capacity, which, for many people is fine. Here, again, for me, it was only 4 tables.
I was going to say.
Only meant 4 tables at 25% capacity, but, it's something. We were closed again. Then from Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day, there was no indoor dining. For some reason, the city also mandated no indoor dining. So we struggled a little bit getting to the end of February, beginning of March. We kind of struggled a little bit. And then we managed to get the second PPP loan from the Small Business Administration, which kind of saved us.
Yeah.
We started reopening, 25% went to 50%, and now we are at full capacity, and I still have also the outdoor dining.
Yeah.
So
now you've got more space.
Now we have more space actually than than we did have in the past. But this is temporary till the end of the year, so I don't know. See, for us, what it creates having more space, it's a double sword situation, because it gives you more space, but then the problem on the other side is being able to take care of to serve the customers properly.
Right. And the capacity of the kitchen as well.
Well, that is the handicap, because it's not to say, okay, I'm going to add more people or another cook, which could be done, but there is nowhere to accommodate them.
Yeah, no, I understand. It is a double-edged sword, as they say,
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to things like that. So let me ask you about shift gears just a little bit and talk just a second about leadership. And I don't think I prompted you on that ahead of time, but you know, for so many business owners, you know, being the leader of the business, how would you advise? Well, first, let me ask, what kind of leadership style do you have? I mean, I know you want things done like you want them done, but.
Well, leadership, you know, first of all, you know, I'm going back to a youth. I mean, having been, I could say, I had the privilege of being, having gone to a really good restaurant school, hotel school in Italy. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I mean, these are all vocational schools, because in the 60s and 70s, Italy was relying a lot on tourism. And they were kind of prepping, getting the employees to accommodate all of this tourism ready for jobs. And so that was my foundation for the way I run a restaurant today. And also you have to take in consideration all of what you have learned throughout your life in this business, because this is all I've done. This is all I know. I don't really, I mean, it's not that I've read books, it's not that I'm trying to follow someone's recommendation. I do what I think it should be done, and I do it the best way I can, to my knowledge. At times, I think if you try and listen to too many people, you kind of get confused, and then you're not able to really rely a good message to your employees. Right. Who should I listen to? Mm-hmm. But I think you have to be firm. You have to know exactly. You have to be sure of what you know. Be firm, what you know. And at times, yes, I mean, some people the employees, they might not like what you have to say, but you know, that is the truth. So that's really what I kind of, you know, I just follow my instinct in a way. And yeah. Also, the other thing that I also take in consideration, especially when you are at the front of the house, when you're dealing with customers, is that what if I were the customer? I'm always trying to put myself in the shoes of the customer. Mm-hmm. How would I react to a certain situation? And that's why I try to tell, you know, sometimes even give you an example with the cooks, and, you know, they send out a dish that is not sloppy, but not on point like it should. Right, they said, you know, would you pay this amount of money for what you're sending out? If you were to pay, would you do it? And if they say, well, no, well, then why are we serving it to someone? Yeah. Why are we sending it out? So, and that is a key thing. You always have to put yourself in the shoe of the customer. and always expect that the customer might know a little more than.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that, you know, transmitting that concept of putting yourself in your customer's shoes to your employees is and getting them to take ownership like you do is an extreme challenge. And, you know, one of the hardest parts of leadership is to get that buy-in from our employees and to get them to thinking like you think and like your customers think.
Right, but also you have to, again, training, it's hard to train personnel these days, especially front of the house personnel, you know, servers. It's extremely hard. But also it's hard to pretend if they do not know. So, and basically, unless they get this training from someone as old as I am, that have had that experience, you've worked with, you know, you've done dinners for a princess or whatever, and you have experienced all of these very high-end, say, banquets where all kind of ceremonies, which now are kind of becoming obsolete, I would say, in today's dining environment. So it's hard for someone that's starting a kid or a high school kid that gets a summer job as a server to understand what's behind it. Because if you do not have that knowledge, that experience, it's hard to relate to something. But that is why I go back to what I said earlier, you know, always putting myself in the shoes of the customer. And usually when you tell a waiter that hasn't done something particularly corrected or served something that shouldn't have, and you bring it to their attention, usually they know that what they've done wasn't really, let's put it this way, that kosher, or they should have taken a different alternative. But yeah, it's not an easy situation, because although we have an enormous amount of restaurants here, and again, most of the restaurants, they're like, I would say, eateries. People go in for food, a beer or something. There are, unless you go to the big cities, you really have very few really high-end restaurants. And to train people, especially servers, for those high-end restaurants is it's really a challenge, because we have no school that are teaching you this.
Yes, sir.
Especially these days. You may have some restaurant school, but restaurant school nowadays here in the United States, and this is another thing that I think some of the young chefs might find interesting to what I have to say. Their schools are focused on, school is a business, and a business is focused on having revenues, and when you have revenues, you want to have a profit. So really what they're looking for is that you pay your tuition, you do your 4 years, right? And yeah, you learn a lot of technical things. But honestly, when you leave school, would you really be ready to go to be on a line in my kitchen to put out 100 dinners a night? I doubt it. And I'm not, I mean, I could be mistaken. There might be some exceptions, but they're not great.
Yeah.
So my advice to these young people, that they have the dream of becoming a chef and eventually owning a restaurant. But owning a restaurant, if you're an owner, it's even more so interesting to be able to be a chef, to manage it. Twofold. First of all, you may have a chef that holds the owner's hostage because, hey, if you don't raise my wage, I'm going to quit. If you don't give me an example, day off, I'm going to quit. And who's going to cook? So you say, okay.
Yeah.
But if you can cook and say, okay, you want to quit? Go ahead. I just go in the kitchen and do it myself. So that's the advantage of it. But what I would do is say, first of all, I'd save the tuition to my parents. What is it, like 4-year college? Restaurant school is like maybe minimum is $100,000 you're looking at.
Yeah.
$80,000, $100,000. Pack the suitcase, tell your parents, get me a ticket to Europe. I'm going to go find work in a restaurant or a hotel with a chef. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to knock at the door and say, hey, chef, can I work for you for nothing for like 6 months or a year? Or you have to give me a bed and food. I'll work for you for nothing. And you do that for 3 or 4 years, 2 years, 3 years. And, you keep moving from restaurant hotels. You learn different types of cuisine, different techniques. You come back, not only you say, but you have so much knowledge that not only you could call yourself a chef. Well, a chef, it's a little bit premature, but you're able to open your own restaurant. You're able to whatever you like, and you're not being held hostage by a chef.
Yeah,
that would be my advice, really, honestly. And nobody does it anymore. I mean, when I was growing up, that's what you did. You just came, all right, you get out of school. Now I'm going to go work for like 6 months there. I'm going to work with that chef. I'm going to go work with that chef, and or doing 6 months at the front of the house with that restaurant. And that was it. That's how you gain the experience.
Well, it was the apprenticeship model, I guess, that people used to utilize, and for this particular industry, it sounds like a great idea, because not only when you go to school you get a lot of book knowledge and things like that, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to cook. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to run a restaurant. But if you've actually gone and done it and gained that real world experience, then when you come back, like you said, you're ready to go. You can do anything. So I think that's a great piece of advice for anybody who's considering, going into that kind of business. Love the idea, and it's great having you on here to share some of that experience and things with us. And I just looked at my clock and realized I had kept you for some time, so I might ought to start wrapping this thing up and let you get back to work. But again, we really appreciate your coming on today, Franco, and sharing your experiences, your history. You've been doing this a long time, and I like what you said. It's the only thing you know how to do, and I feel like that about myself as well. I'm not smart enough to do multiple things, so I had to learn how to do one thing right. And
do it well, yes.
Yeah,
one thing, do it well.
Again, it's, for our audience, we appreciate you guys tuning in and listening today, and we hope that you grab some of those golden nuggets of wisdom, and if you didn't, listen again and make sure you're taking notes in order to help yourself grow. And again, I just want to say thank you to Franco for coming on today and for talking about Fiorino and his restaurant, as well as his lifelong journey through this restaurant world or food service world. Thank you again for being on. Any last words of wisdom you want to share? Feel free.
Well, thank you, Jeff, first of all, for the invite, for having me on, and thank you for listening or watching this podcast. Everyone there, remember, don't do it for the money. The money eventually will come.
Yeah, and I think that's a great piece of advice. I've heard it once or twice, and it seems to be the way it works. It takes a while to build the business and be successful, and we appreciate you sharing all that information with our group. And with that, I'm going to sign off of the Local Leaders Podcast today. And again, I wish Franco and Fiorino the most success. They're very deserving. And if you're in the Philadelphia area and you haven't been by to try his food, you need to get over there. The restaurant's open and they're ready for customers. I think what are you running, Wednesday through Sunday?
Wednesday to Sunday, and reservation are a must.
Yes.
If you happen to be in the area.
I think
Love
reservations.
to see you.
I think reservations being a must has almost taken over the country. It's hard to get into any good establishment these days without thinking ahead. But if you haven't been there yet, get there. Fiorino's, Philadelphia. What's the website once again?
It's fiorino.us.
There you go, fiorino.us. Go visit, check out the menu. You can check out the history. There's some background in there, about the name, about the, where it all came from. And it's a great story. And we wish you all the best and the most success. And thank you again, sir.
Thank you much. Thanks, Jeff. Bye now. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Right.